Today on CJ Off-Road, I am more than excited to be installing a TeraFlex ST3 3.5-inch lift kit on our 2018 JL. Now TeraFlex reached out to us and they hooked us up with their brand new lift kit available for your 2018 and 19 JL Wrangler. Now with our Jeep, we do plan on taking it off-road this entire summer and really going crazy with it, so we wanted to go with one of the top suspension systems on the market. Their ST3 kit features everything that you need to get it bolted up onto your JL Wrangler and get the absolute best ride quality. Now this specific kit here comes with the new Falcon 3.3 adjustable shocks that have been tuned and valved specifically for the JL Wrangler with the weight and characteristics of the vehicle in mind. They're completely adjustable and include all the hardware and bracketry needed to mount them up onto your Jeep Wrangler. They have both left and right side specific coil springs, all the bump stop strike pads, even the control arm correction brackets right here to make sure that you have a perfect ride quality. Now I've installed a couple of these before, so we're going to do this one on camera, show you guys how you can do this to your Jeep and make our JL into an absolute beast. Alright guys, we've got the entire front end disassembled here. Now we're going to show you a short clip on how to get that done. It saves some time, plus we run a bunch of aftermarket companies on here, so we don't really have the stock suspension laying around. Let's show you guys that clip so you can get your front end disassembled, and then we'll get started.
The first step is get your axle supported, then remove the lower shock mount bolt. After you pull your hardware out, I like to keep it in the same spot. We're going to be reusing this with the new shocks. The next step is going to be to remove this sway bar link. It's going to use the same 19mm socket and open box wrench. I'm going to start by removing this lower link here. We're going to keep this hardware in the same place once again. Next step is going to be to remove this upper nut onto the stud. It helps if you use an impact, gets it off a little bit easier. Go ahead and pull this nut off the stud on your control arm. It holds on the bracket which attaches to your ABS and brake lines. You're going to reuse this bracket on the new control arm, so we'll pull it off now. Make sure you hold on to all the hardware you pull off. After you have the lower shock mount bolt removed, work your way to the top. This is actually an outboarded mount with a single stud. Go ahead and pull that off and you can completely remove your shock. Make sure you keep the hardware once again. On the passenger side of the vehicle, on the axle tube, you have your vacuum actuated disconnect. There's a little connector on the back here. Pull the red tab out towards you, push down and pull it out. We're going to actually remove the lines here by using a trim removal tool. That way when we sag the axle, it doesn't stretch these out and ruin them. There's a push pin right up here on the upper control arm bracket. We're going to get that one pulled out. There's another one right here on this little tab we're going to get out. We're going to remove the control arms now. There's an upper bolt here and a lower bolt that goes on your axle. They're going to use a 24mm socket and a box wrench. Pull the lower control arm bolts out. Pull the upper bolt out and remove the control arm. We're going to go ahead and lower our axle. That way we can get the coil spring out of the way. Push the coil spring up a little bit and it'll pull right out towards you.
So the first thing that we're going to do is actually get the new spring installed with the bump stop. So TeraFlex tip is to actually put a small zip tie around the bump stop. That way it makes it easier to go on. So we've got our Jeep pretty lowered down, which does make it a heck of a lot easier to get the spring installed. Now all you have to do is cut this zip tie. We didn't have to hold it at all, and use the provided hardware to get that bolted down into our coil bucket. Once you have both side springs in, we're now going to install the sway bar link. The upper side with the stud is going to go towards the top and in through the outside. Then the lower portion is going to use the factory hardware. And we're going to get these tightened down using an 18mm socket down below and an 18 up top with a 4mm Allen key on the inside there, so this inner part doesn't spin. Now before I forget, we do have to mount these up. Now if you go to page 19 of the instruction manual, you're going to find a resource on the exact length you need for these. So make sure to check that first and then use the included hardware as well as the lock nut underneath and the provided tool like this to get these tightened up as well. Using the provided tool as well as a 6mm Allen key, you can get this tightened down. It does take a little bit of time. You can do it on your own, but Brendan's here helping me out today, so it makes it a hell of a lot easier. To put the Falcon 3.3 shocks, we do have to trim our inner liner a little bit, so I'm just gonna mark it right here for trimming, and then go through with a sharp pair of scissors to get that done up. That way it can sit flush along here. Okay guys, so we got the Falcon shock up in here with that top bolt installed. The one thing we didn't do is cut the hole right here and have this pop through. Our inner fenders are pretty beat up. We wheel a lot, so they're not really set up the right way, and they were cut before. So what we decided to do is just tuck it behind there. We still got the nice Falcon logo up here, and then trim this back a little bit. We are gonna be doing some aluminum flares in the future, as well as some aluminum inners here. So this will work for now and still allow us to adjust this while having access to this bolt and getting the rest installed. Now we're gonna get the shocks tightened up with an 18mm socket up top. Once you get them tightened down, make sure you paint mark them too, as we do with everything. That way we know it's tightened down to spec. Now we're gonna go ahead and tighten down the lower shock bolts. So the next step is actually to remove your brake line from the included factory bracket. Now this is a bit of a pain in the butt, but if you use 2 pry bars, I found that it works the best because the bracket wants to bend if you use one, so you can't get enough leverage. So what I do is line one up with the axle like this, get under it and force it out. Be careful not to pinch your brake line. This is a fun process. I'm gonna get started and show you guys what it looks like when it's done. Okay guys, so this is kind of what victory looks like right now. We've got that completely separated. You can see it's pretty thick steel. Just got to wedge up under there and break it free. This is going to go in the garbage can. We don't need this because it comes with their new brake line anchor, so this will go in the trash. So after you peel those back, what you're going to replace them with is the TeraFlex brake line anchor kit. Now this kit comes with this obviously, and what you're going to do is actually put this on the back mount underneath your nut of the shock bolt, and then you use the included zip ties just to snug that down around the brake line there. So that's basically all it takes. Do this on both sides and then we're gonna move on. So for your track bar bracket, they include this piece here. Now we've already drilled 2 pilot holes at 1/4 inch. You're gonna have to drill right here and then one back there. Now I'm gonna go through and do the final size of a 1/2 inch in these 2 holes. When you drill the pilot hole, make sure that you have this completely bolted down because it does like to shift. Now I can set it aside and then drill these both out to a 1/2 inch now that we have a pilot hole drilled. All right guys, now that we have all the holes drilled, we're gonna reinstall sway bar link we had to remove, and then get the hardware that TeraFlex includes. In the front here, this first one here is just gonna get your standard bolt and nut, and then on the back side, what you're gonna do is fish this through. Okay guys, now we're gonna go through and tighten everything down with an 18mm socket. Okay guys, now we can get our track bar reinstalled into this upper hole using the TeraFlex included hardware. One thing y'all really like about TeraFlex is that the hardware is all grade 8 and it's just super nice, so let's go ahead and get this mounted up here. Got it. We're gonna get this tightened down while it's up in the air and then do a final tight down when it's on the ground. So the next part is actually pretty fun too. We've got to pretty much loosen up all the control arms so we can get the drop brackets in. I've done this once. It's kind of a pain in the butt. If you have a lift, it's a little bit easier. Make sure you have the front axle supported as well as the frame supported because you can kind of make them work with each other, but we're gonna loosen up the top here. We're actually gonna completely remove the upper control arm, loosen up the front here, and then remove the bolt in the back here, and then grab the TeraFlex drop brackets. Should be pretty fun. Let's get it done. We're also going to remove the heat shield on the upper control arm bracket. You're not going to be able to reuse this, so go ahead and grab a 10mm socket and just zip that off. There's one on the back side here and then one all the way up on the top. Got both the bolts out of the upper control arm. Now you can remove it and set it aside for later. Okay guys, now it's time to put the drop brackets in. You're gonna see they're gonna slide right up into place like so. And we're gonna put some spacers in too. I'm gonna show you guys how to do that. TeraFlex gives really detailed instructions too on how to do it, so it's not too difficult. What you're gonna do for the top one is you're gonna go through the bracket, through a short spacer, through the control arm bracket, another longer spacer, through the other side of the bracket, and then before the frame and your new bracket, you're gonna put another small one. We're gonna use the supplied hardware in through the long spacer in there and then put a nut on the backside. So we've got all that loosely installed. We're gonna go ahead and reinstall our upper control arm. Okay guys, all the hardware is installed, so I'm gonna go ahead and say that that's it for the front end. You're gonna wanna tighten everything up. Repeat the exact same process on the other side for everything on the front side, and then tighten it up when it's on the ground. So we're gonna move on to the rear now and start working on that. Okay guys, so we moved on to the rear. The front's completely buttoned up. Once we get back to it, we'll torque down all those control arms that I told you about once it's on the ground. First thing you want to do in the rear is obviously take off your wheels and tires, and we're going to remove the lift kit that was on here. We're just going to take the coil springs out as well as the shocks and the extended sway bar link, since TeraFlex includes all the brand new goodies that you need. First thing we need to do according to TeraFlex's instructions is remove the emergency brake bracket up top there, and then we're actually going to disconnect it from each side of the brake caliper so we can route it under the cross member and give us some more room. I'm going to do that now and show you guys how to get it done. Okay guys, so the emergency brake cable bracket is all the way up here. Once you pull the bracket out, it'll look like this. You go ahead and set this aside. You won't be reusing it, as well as the bolt. So what you guys need to do is actually climb inside the vehicle and engage the e-brake. Once you have it engaged, you're going to use a pair of vice grips on both sides to clamp the actuator pin all the way out. After that's done and they're both really tight, go back inside and release the e-brake, giving you slack on the cables like so. Once you have that slack, you can easily pull the ends out. Now make sure not to touch the vice grips because you don't want that shooting back in, or else it'll be a royal pain in the ass to get back on. Once you have this out, we're gonna go underneath and just push each of these in, slide that through, and then get it under that cross member. I'm gonna do that on both sides. Get it under there so we have some more clearance. Once you have both sides out, then you're gonna have to go underneath your Jeep and fish them under the cross member. It's not crazy difficult. However, it does take just a little bit of time to make sure that you do it right. You're gonna go over both the cross member and all of the fuel line section. Okay guys, and when you have that through, you can now reconnect your emergency brake cables. First thing that we're gonna do is ditch the lower shock bolt to remove these shocks here. We're gonna pick up on our jack stands just a little bit, so we can pop that bolt out. Pull the shock bottom out just like that. Now I like to keep my hardware where I pulled it out, that way I don't lose it. Now pull off the upper bolt. And you can ditch the shocks. Now I'm gonna ditch the sway bar links. The lower one's gonna use an 18mm socket and an 18mm wrench on the other side. And do the same on the other side. Now for the upper bolt, you're gonna have to use a 6mm Allen key and an 18mm ratchet wrench or regular wrench to get that off. Now we're going to take that sway bar link, throw it right into the trash. It's a new home. Now because we are installing a drop bracket, as well as we need to let our axle droop as much as possible to throw in the new springs, we're going to remove this 18mm bolt that's holding on the lower portion of our track bar. And I lied, that's a 21mm. Okay, scratch that. We're going to be using a 21mm to remove the lower bolt on our track bar. Trust me, I'm the Jeep expert, right Ryan? That's out for all of your viewing pleasure. And what we're going to do is toss that right back into the factory location. Okay guys, voila! All right. Okay, now we're gonna install the springs. So make sure you grab the right side. These are left and right side specific, so make sure you get the right side. Now we're gonna install the TeraFlex provided sway bar links. They're gonna go from the outside to the inside, and then same down below. Up top, you'll have a brand new nut there, and then down below, you're gonna use the factory hardware. Pull that sway bar down, and then we'll get the lower bolts installed as well. And then same thing to get these on, 18 up top with the 6mm Allen key, 2 18s down below, get those tightened up. Okay. So we got these tightened down. Now I'm gonna go up top, and I lied to you guys before. It's actually a 19mm with a 6mm Allen key. TeraFlex always keeping it, you know, fresh on me, so I gotta change up the ratchet size. We're gonna bolt these into place using these small bolts here with an Allen head up top and the nut on the bottom. I'm gonna get these two tightened up, and then I'll show you how to install the rest of it up top. That's tight like that. Now let's move on to the back one. Do the same thing. Now what you've gotta do for the top section is actually grab a couple things. So in our case, we're actually gonna be using 2 of these strike pads, which will set right on top of there. And then you actually have your bump stop piece, which will go right like that. Now to make this all work, TeraFlex includes this little piece here to go right in through this part. And then you use your Allen key bolt to come right up through the bottom and thread into this. This little piece is actually threaded inside there. So I've never seen this design, but I gotta be honest guys, it's really impressive, and it looks really clean when it's all done. To be able to, you know, kind of modify this for your use and be able to get it done. Now make sure it's all squared up. Go ahead and use an Allen key and get this completely tightened up. Then go underneath and do the back side. Then after those are tightened down, we're gonna do the exact same thing on the other side. That'll complete your bump stops. Good slap. So since we are running the Falcon 3.3 shocks, we've got to space out our sway bar here. They've included the brackets, so use a 15mm, drop both of these, and then we're gonna put the spacers in. Okay guys, so the spacer will go in between there, and you'll be able to tell which way it goes because the writing will be the correct way, i.e. the Falcon logo will be like that. And you're gonna wanna put a little bit of blue thread lock, which is included in this kit. And then you're gonna just put these back on and tighten them up with that same 15 you just struggled with to get them off. It'll be good to go, man. So now what we're gonna do is install the Falcon 3.3 shocks, and they are side specific, so make sure you do that right. The top will go in like this. And then just start to thread that in. Then down below, we're gonna swing this over. So in order to get our track bar back to a proper location, TeraFlex includes this bracket, same as the front. What we're gonna do is slip it over, right like that. And then what I'm gonna do is use the factory bolt and spacer down here. Slide it up into place. So I've got this bolted down here using the original bolt as well as that aluminum spacer, that way it doesn't crush. There's 2 bolts on the outside out here that need to go on, however there's no holes there, which means we gotta drill them. Same thing up front, 2 pilot holes, we're gonna use a 1/4 inch and then go out to a maximum 1/2 inch size. I'm gonna drill the pilot holes, pull this off, and then drill it through this way, which will make it a lot easier with the larger 1/2 inch bit, but I'm gonna get to it and just drill through on this side and then come through the other side and show you guys what to do. So now that I have both the pilot holes drilled, I'm going to use a 1/2 inch and go through on this side. Okay guys, now it's time to slide the bracket over there. What we're going to do is use the included hardware from TeraFlex. Run the bolt through the outside. And then last but not least, we're going to use the included grade 8 hardware with the spacer down below here. Go all the way through the nut on the back. And then for our application, we're going to use the top slide. And then put also the included grade 8 straight through that hole. Also, just a little bit of help from our friendly neighborhood hammer to get that on. And now we can go around and get everything tightened up. Bolt heads on these are 16 mil and the nuts on the back are an 18, just for reference for you guys. And after I get this bolted up, I can get the shock completely bolted up too. Once we have these torqued down to spec, make sure you put a red line on them. That way you know they're tight, and if you have any movement in the future, just like we've been doing for this entire build. So once you make sure everything is tightened down, torqued down completely, your install's complete, all you got to do is throw your wheels and tires on, and then in about 500 miles, make sure that you check everything, and that's why I put a little red line. That way you can just visually check it real quick. It's always helpful to torque everything down, guys, but that's it. TeraFlex install is done. It's finished. You're done. All right, guys, well, that's a wrap for the TeraFlex ST3 suspension lift. Overall, it'll take about 4 to 5 hours to install this. However, with us being on camera, it took about 8 hours, so it is the next day. We finally torqued down the front control arm bolts while it was on the ground, and it's looking pretty phenomenal outside. I gotta be honest, the stance of this is really great. Plus, with the control arm drop brackets, you're gonna have an enhanced ride that you didn't have from the factory. It's gonna lower them, make them more parallel to the ground, and give you a better ride quality out of the Jeep. Now, with the Falcon 3.3 shocks, we're gonna be able to fine tune those, find our perfect setting, and be able to have perfect ride on-road, off-road, and just about any terrain. Now, if you guys are interested in this TeraFlex lift kit, as well as many other great suspension components, be sure to check us out at cjponyparts.com. Hope you enjoyed that video. To stay up to date on our CJ Off-Road videos, make sure to subscribe up top here, and for any other installs, make sure to click the link right above.